The feeling of knowing when you're going to die, the last song ever sung, and a kiss to say goodbye. I'm your host Jay Durain, and we have all of this on today's most amazing top 10 list. Coming in number 10, we have When You Know You Know. Let's kick off this one with Reddit user Through the Shades. This person has been working in a hospital for a long time. They'd encountered thousands of patients, some of them very dramatic, and some of them came in calm and focused. There was one day when someone was brought in to the emergency and they were in some pretty rough shape, but for some reason they had the most relaxed composure that they had ever seen on a patient. This person needed a tourniquet on right away and they were losing a lot of blood. Right when our Reddit user doctor was applying this tourniquet, the patient looked at them and said, "I'm dying." In that moment they watched their eyes closed and they passed away. Through the Shades wrote that they could always tell who really knew they were going to die and who didn't. Some people would just be screaming "I'm dying" because they were panicking and scared about what was going to happen to them, but this person knew that their time was coming and they calmly moved on to whatever comes after we die. That must have been one of the most frightening and exhilarating moments of their life. I mean, I don't want to die anytime soon, but it would be cool to find out the answer to one of life's biggest mysteries. Coming in number 9, we have the body. Reddit user Really Unbelievable said that they were a surgeon and responded to a question on Reddit asking what was the craziest thing that doctors have heard before patients died. Now, because this guy's Reddit name is Really Unbelievable, it's gonna make this one a little harder to believe, but I'm not here to snoop through everyone's Reddit profile to find out if they were actually a surgeon. I'm here to bring you the craziest stuff I can find. So this doctor wrote that they were in the room with a patient and he was on his deathbed. He was about to go and he kept saying "there's a body behind the oak tree" over and over again. Of course, this was a very creepy thing to say as you're dying. I don't think someone who's about to say goodbye to the land of the living would be keen on pulling one last prank. Or they would, I have no idea what it feels like to die. But in these final moments, those words shocked everyone in the room, and the police came in to get some information, but not before the man died. So they took those few words and then launched a small search behind the man's house. There was a wooded area, and even though there were a few oak trees, nothing substantial was found. So maybe this guy was just messing with everyone, or maybe he was telling the truth but didn't have enough strength to give them all the details. Coming at number 8, we have Where's My Dog? Okay, now we have a really sad one for you, so you better grab some tissues because this one is a tearjerker. Reddit user X Texan Pride X wrote in about a time they had someone rushed into the emergency because they were in a serious car accident. The person who was brought into the emergency had one of their arms ripped off and he was losing blood very fast. It was pretty clear that this guy wasn't going to make it. His blood pressure was dropping too fast, but right before he passed out, he asked if his dog was okay. See, his dog had been in the car with him when he was in the crash, and all he wanted to know was if his dog was okay. The doctor didn't answer him because he didn't want to cause him any more stress because his dog didn't survive the crash. It wasn't long after the question that he passed out and then passed on. I guess one can hope that when he got up to the pearly gates, his good boy was waiting for him there. I told you, this was a sad one. Coming in at number 7, we have Dad's Last Words. Now this one doesn't come from a doctor, but it happened in a hospital, and it was someone's last words, so it's pretty much what we're looking for here. Reddit user Artsy Fartsy talked about when their father was in the hospital with lung cancer. His dad lived a long life and was around 80 now, but he hadn't always treated his body the best. He was a smoker for most of his life, and when he got older, all of that caught up with him. A Reddit user talked about how his father was a foot soldier in World War II, and when he would tell old stories about the war, he said he would always talk about how he used to sing this song. "Show me the way home, I'm tired and I want to go to bed. I had a drink about an hour ago and it went straight to my head." I can see how that would be a hit while you're marching during the war. Well, while his dad was on his deathbed, he was in and out of consciousness in the hospital. He was very sick and they had him on a lot of medication. Well, a Reddit user said that he managed to come to for long enough to sing that song one final time before he passed. Those were the last words he ever said. Coming at number 6, we have How Does It Happen? Reddit user JL Blessing Jr. talked about the time they were working in a hospital and they had a patient who was very sick. They were in the late stages of cancer and they knew they weren't going to make it very much longer. This patient turned to them and said, "How do I die?" And that was the last thing they said before they passed away. I mean, if you're in that situation as a doctor and you have someone say that to you, how do you even answer it? It seems like such a difficult thing to respond to. Do you tell them what's actually going to happen to their body and how they're going to pass on to the other side? Or do you tell them something sweet so they feel at ease? Of course, you don't want to make this person more afraid of death than they probably already are, but at the same time, do you want to lie to someone who's about to die? Coming in at number 5, we have You Know What's Coming. Sometimes you can have a premonition about your own life. You get a gut feeling and you don't know why, but there's something telling you a hint from the future. Who knows what that is, but we have a pretty interesting moment of it in our next story. Reddit user Pizza with Artichoke talked about a time they were about to perform surgery on a patient. It was someone with an infected heart valve from drug use. That is something I didn't even know could happen. They should tell you that when they're trying to get kids not to do drugs. Well, the patient was laying on their bed and they hadn't fed them the anesthesia yet. The guy sat up and said, "I'm going to die, aren't I?" Apparently he had been through a couple of these surgeries before and the chance of surviving the next one was pretty low. He died on the table during the surgery. That's a wild story, and it brings up the question, did he see his future and know he was going to die? Or did he convince himself that he was going to die, and because of that, it increased his chances of dying on the table? And if you think I have the answer to this question, you guys are dead wrong. I make top 10 lists. Coming in number 4, we have Hey Angel. A Reddit user who deleted their account said that they used to work in a hospital and they would have to go to the ICU quite often. There was one patient who they would see all the time, and for the most part, they would have a casual conversation. Then one day they seemed a little off. He looked at her and said, "Hey Angel." This was very strange because he had never called her Angel before. After that, he just laid back and went to sleep. Later that night, he passed away. What was so weird about this was when he said Angel, it seemed like he wasn't looking right at her. It was like he was looking behind her, but there was no one there. This could have been a hallucination from someone who's about to pass on. I mean, when your body's getting ready to go, you can have some pretty wild things happen to your mind. But what if he really saw something there? What if there was someone waiting to take him to the other side? Coming in at number 3, we have What a Way to Go. Alright, here's one that's a little bit more of a warmer story compared to the other ones on this list. Reddit user Cinderella talked about a story her dad told her from being a doctor. He was a doctor in an inner city hospital, and they would get a lot of people who had substance abuse problems. One day a guy came in who was there quite often and was also known for being extremely rude to the nurses and doctors. This time when the guy came in, he was in the worst shape he'd ever been in. His lungs were full of pneumonia and his heart was in even worse shape than that. He was in a room by himself, and our Reddit user Dr. Dad saw on one of the monitors that he was having an irregular heartbeat. So he walked into the patient's room and stood in the doorway. He asked the dude how he was feeling and he said, "With my hands, you jerk off." And then he died right after that. I mean, that's one hell of a line to go out on. Coming in at number 2, we have By Yourself. British guy ESQ wrote on Reddit about how he was working as a doctor and he had a patient who was quite a bit older and very sick. The guy had stage 4 lung cancer and there was no chance of him beating it, so it was only a matter of time before he passed on. This patient had a feeling that he was going to pass that night, and he asked our Reddit user doctor if he could sit with him that night. See, the old dude had no family and he was there all by himself and was dying alone. The guy just didn't want to die alone, and there was no way our Reddit user was going to let that happen. The last thing the old man said before he passed on was thank you. And coming at the number 1 spot, we have a kiss. Our final one today comes from Reddit user Quacaro. They were working as a doctor and they had one patient who was dying from brain cancer. Something they would have to do is come in and speak loudly to him to see if he was conscious or not. It was something that our doctor didn't like to do, so they asked his wife if she would do it. She kindly obliged. One day they were doing this routine check and the doctor came in and the wife started speaking loudly to him to see if he was conscious. In that moment, he took her hand and kissed it and then passed away. Not final words, but as clear a message as anyone could ever send. Alright guys, that has been our list. Thank you all so much for tuning in. As always, I've been your host Trader Rain, and I'll see you on the next one. That's how I open every video. Sorry. Yeah, welcome to the team. The feeling you know when you're going to... Knowing when you're going to die. The last song you've ever... The feeling of knowing when you... Let's kick off this list with Reddit. Let's kick off this list with one from... Let's kick off this list with... asking what was the craziest thing that doctors have ever heard of. Asking Reddit user Artsy Fartsy talked about when their father was... Sorry. It's just his name's Artsy Fartsy and we're talking about something serious. And when he would tell old stories about the war, So he walked into the patient's room. So he